members of the Executive Committee of Bombay Management Association, and attendees for the day. We're happy to have Mr. Bharat Bambawale for one of the most sought after events of Bombay Management Association under the banner of what we call as Friday Fundamentals, when we invite eminent experts from different walks of life who've always been very graciously volunteered to address members of BMA. Mr. Bharat will talk about marketing in the 2020s, what has changed forever, what remains timeless. Mr. Bharat is considered to be one of the India's leading marketing practitioners. He spent 38 years in marketing and advertising in organizations like Lowe Partners, formerly Lintas, and J Walter Thompson, now Wunderman Thompson. Early in his earlier career at Hindustan Lever, on behalf of Ogilvy India, Mr. Bharat received a profound and sustained exposure to Unilever approach to marketing and orchestrated a tenfold increase in the revenue. In 2007, Mr. Bharat moved to London as J. Walter Thompson's global director on Unilever. On his return to India in 2011, he became Airtel's first and the only global brand director. I'm sure we're all aware of that particular ad, Her Friend Jaruri Hai, yeah, and Jo Mera Hai, Wo Tera Hai. You know, it was such a wonderful, I just cannot forget that. Since 2013, Mr. Bharat runs his marketing consulting outfit. His first book, The Nine Timeless Nuggets, Essentials of Marketing for the Young and Ambitious Marketing Students, has been a great success. We all know that the shift in the past couple of years has changed marketing forever. The marketing industry is now at an evolutionary crossroads. It is a time of reckoning, an inflection point, perhaps. The science and art of exploring, creating, and delivering value has changed phenomenally and will continue to evolve and change. On top of that, technology has been rapidly growing and shifting. And I'm not a marketing person, but I know the way things are changing substantially. We are seeing innovations that were previously unimaginable. One of these innovations for the many people today we talk about is called metaverse, a unique, immersive virtual environment that is quickly taking over the internet with things like artificial intelligence, AR, augmented reality, virtual reality, and whatnot. Some time back, I'd seen a movie called the Matrix series, and something like metaverse was imagined in that movie. Now it's no more a fiction; it's all happening. And I personally believe that metaverse is going to change the way education is also being offered. I'm from a business school, and I know it is going to impact even all the functional areas of management, right from finance, marketing, HR, operations, and whatnot. And metaverse is also going to change the way marketing is done, and we are already experiencing. The other day, Google launched something, the Google Map in a very immersive mode. It will probably come to India in a few months from now, but those things are happening. And let's not also forget that there's a huge amount of work going on what we call as the quantum computing, and people are talking about 6G, 7G, and data has really become a big oil. So let's just get enlightened by Mr. Bharat Bambawale and see what's happening in the field of marketing. How is it going to really cope up with these kinds of changes all around the world? And I'm sure there's no other better person to talk about this aspect of the changes in marketing, what Mr. Bharat possesses. So over to you, Mr. Bharat. All for you.
Thank you ever so much for that introduction, Dr. Vigyan. A very good evening to you, Dr. Lagate, and the team members of the Bombay Management Association who've been so kind in helping me set up for this. Lakshmi, Supriya, Oindrila, and the others. Thank you to everyone who's on the session today for deciding to spend your next 90 minutes with me. Thank you very much for the pleasure of your company. I'm really happy that you're here. I'm really looking forward to sharing some ideas with you. And I hope that in the Q&A that we do at the end of this session, we can even elevate the ground that we break on this subject. About tech and Wi-Fi, I think I'm stable at the moment, but should anything untoward and unexpected happen with the connection, please bear with me because I'll reconnect using another source of Wi-Fi. I've prepared a presentation for you, which is going to take the first 60 minutes or so of this interaction. And then I gather we have a half hour to take your questions and hopefully answer them to your satisfaction. So let me begin by sharing my presentation with you. Could somebody just unmute to let me know that you can see my screen?
Yeah, we can see.
Wonderful. Thank you. So I'll now proceed with my presentation. As you see on the screen, the presentation is titled Marketing in the 2020s, What Has Changed and What Remains Timeless. I've crafted this presentation for you this evening. This is specifically made for this audience, but obviously it incorporates a range of ideas that I've been working with for a number of years. In his introduction, Dr. Vigyan has already mentioned that I was the global brand director at Airtel, and for the last 9 years, I've been running my own small consulting practice, Bharat Bambawale and Associates, and I'm also the author of a book, 9 Timeless Nuggets. Now here in the second slide, I'm giving you a glimpse of my book, because think of it like a commercial at the start of a program, if you like, a word from the sponsor, as it were. So while my sponsor for this session is, of course, the Bombay Management Association, I just wanted to give you a glimpse of the book. Should it interest you at some point, you'd like to buy it. I think it's still available on Amazon, although most of the copies are sold out, but I think there are still some still available. And I also brought this up to mention that there are going to be some ideas from this book that I'm going to present as part of the session. Now, any conversation that we have today on marketing cannot ignore the fact that we've just come out of 2 very, very difficult years of the pandemic. It would also be appropriate for us to raise our gaze past the pandemic. And that is really the sort of perspective that I've taken for the talk today, where I'm really going to take you past where we are in the pandemic to talk about things, ideas in marketing, which were already beginning to bubble to the surface pre-pandemic, some of which might have actually got accelerated during the pandemic and during the lockdowns and during the work from homes and so on, and other ideas which are new, which have come to us in more recent times. But before we come to those, I felt it would be useful for us to just say, what is it that we are leaving or exiting the pandemic with? What is sentiment among consumers in India like? What are people thinking about from a from a consumption perspective? Now, each one of us has our own take, excuse me, on things like the state of the economy, on things like whether consumers are back, on things such as whether the pandemic has had a permanent effect on the way people are, the way they think, the way they buy. All of us have various views on this. And what I thought I would do is borrow from a presentation that I was looking at recently, which is published by McKinsey, and present to you a few slides on what they are reporting is the sentiment of Indian consumers as we exit the pandemic. So 3 or 4 slides from a survey, a McKinsey survey, this is not me, a McKinsey survey on Indian consumer sentiment. They say during the coronavirus crisis, because this has been covering a number of data points right through the pandemic and the lockdown. And the headline is that Indian consumers' optimism has remained high since October 2021 and has reached the highest levels across other Asian markets since COVID-19 started. Now let's look at this, just take 4 glimpses from this study. Again, I emphasize this is a McKinsey study and it is their material, but it's published on the web, so any one of you can look at it. What this first slide is telling us is that Indian consumers' overall optimism has steadily increased over the past years. So if you look at the blue section of the bar right on top, that is the section of people who believe that the economy will rebound between 2 to 3 months. And remember, the data point last taken was March 2022. So they're talking about where we are today in June, or on the threshold of June 2022. 75% of our consumers believe that the economy will rebound or will have rebounded by now. Or if you add the lighter blue bar below that, in the extreme right column, another 20% believe it will happen in the next 6 to 12 months. So essentially, what consumers are saying is that they're optimistic about us moving back into good times after the pandemic. Let's look at this second chart. Almost 6 in 10 consumers are saying that their personal finances have returned to normal or will have by quarter 2 2022. Again, that means we are on the threshold of quarter 2 2022 anyway. And what this chart is saying is that if you look at the blue right on top, it is saying that by June 2022, people expect for their personal household finances to return to normal, or soon after that. So what consumers are telling us is, according to this study by McKinsey, that their money incomes are going to be resuming where they were pre-pandemic. Now, what do they want to do? How do they want to approach spending? This third chart tells us that consumers still want to splurge, and the intent to spend is high across incomes and generations. So if you look at the 3 columns on the left in black and gray, the section in black says plan on splurging. And if you look at the March 2022 column, which is the third column from the left, 83% of people, and this is across Gen Z, millennials, Gen X, and older people, 83% of consumers intend to spend or intend to splurge. And splurge is more than common sense spending. It's the kind of indulgent spending, excessive spending that they intend to do. Finally, what if they do splurge? What are they going to splurge on? If you look at the bars, the topmost bar where 47% of people say they will splurge is restaurants, dining out, bars. And in successive reducing order, apparel, shoes, and accessories is the next bar, travel, lodging, vacation is the next bar, personal services, electronics, and so on. This survey is, if you accept this survey, what it's telling us is that people seem to be keen to get back into a consumption frame of mind. People seem to be keen. They expect to have money. They expect to spend money. They expect to indulge themselves. They expect to compensate for all the shortcomings and shortfalls and holding back that they've done over the last couple of years. And if we accept the findings of this particular study, it looks like India is going to be soon looking at another consumption boom. Okay, if consumers are coming back to spending, are they coming back in exactly the same shape and form that they were, let's say, before pandemic, or 5 years before that, or 10 years before that? Or are there any changes that exist that are pertinent to us in marketing, which are far more far-reaching than the gaze that we have on the pandemic behavior, and which may have started even before the pandemic? And what I'd like to now do is present to you 6 things which I, in my modest opinion, believe have changed forever. Let me start with the first one. The multi-identity customer is now mainstream. And over the next 3 or 4 slides, I'm going to unpack this point and explain it in further detail. And when you hear me talk about it, you'll also understand what I mean precisely by the multi-identity customer. Now, those of you who are already in marketing and those of you who interact with marketing will know that historically, definitions of customers in marketing tended to be descriptions of demographics with a little bit of category attitudes and behavior, and possibly a little bit of psychographics. So it is not uncommon for us to use consumer definitions such as parents of children 5 to 15 years living in urban areas, wanting a good life for their children with the ability to spend on luxuries, or some such statement, right? These are reductive statements. What you're trying to do in this is you're trying to take the enormous complexity of decision-making that consumers actually have within them and reduce it into a simple sentence that is all-encompassing and descriptive of an entire audience. My submission to you is that while demographics remain necessary and they remain useful, they are insufficient in understanding customer motivations by a considerable measure. The reason why most descriptions of audiences tend to be demographic is the legacy of media buying. Media was bought on the basis of demographics. Where does the publication or where does the channel or where does the platform reach? And because media data came essentially in demographic forms, understanding of consumers or customers started becoming more and more demographic shaped. But all of us in marketing knew that a demographic description of a customer is, while necessary and useful without doubt, it is insufficient in understanding why people buy. If you look outside demographic models for motivations, you have to actually go back to post-Second World War models such as the Maslow hierarchy of needs to look at a model which tries to explain why people consume, how they live their lives. And as we all know, because we know this model very well, this is a sequential model. It believes that your physiological needs need to be satisfied first. After your physiological needs are satisfied and your safety needs are satisfied, then you will express love and belonging needs. Then you will express self-esteem needs, and then you will express self-actualization needs. This is the sort of idea behind this model, that first you need air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, and reproduction before you can go to higher order needs. But if you look at the 4 images on the right and you look at the bottom image, there is a family of pavement dwellers who possibly live under a flyover, who have no guarantee on air, water, food, or shelter, who have no guarantee on safety, but who are expressing love and belonging needs. They are creating family, friendship, intimacy, and they are living a life of a higher order need, even though their low order needs are not fulfilled. If you look at the second image, which is of a security camera, you know that regardless of whether the other needs are met or not met, our need for security expresses itself in either cameras or watchmen outside buildings or a police force or a military, or indeed any of those satisfactions of that need. The third image from the bottom is of a march by an underprivileged section of our society who have unfortunately for years had to get the short end of the stick. And if you look at the banners ask for self-esteem. So although this is an unfortunate segment of our society who haven't had access to as much in terms of, let's say, opportunity and care and such things, This does not prevent them from wanting to express self-esteem needs. And finally, right on the top is a photograph of the Warkaris of Maharashtra. If you are a Maharashtrian like me, you probably know about the Warkaris firsthand. If you are somebody who's had some interaction with this state or has had seen the Warkaris come to Pune, these are people who have very little by way of money, very little by way of home, very little by way of self-esteem needs, but they're already in a self-actualization frame of mind where they are actually jumping straight to the top of what is supposed to be a sequential model and they eschew many of the lower order needs before asking for the highest need. What this means in practical terms is human beings are neither defined by demographics alone, nor do sequential need models explain why people buy or why they redeem certain ideas, why they seek certain gratifications. And because of my own personal dissatisfaction with this, I came up with my own model, which is present in my book, which I'm going to share with you in just the next couple of slides. And it's a model which helps me share with my clients as well as understand why people buy at a very core and fundamental level, even below the level of categories. The model is based on essentially two dimensions of us human beings and the motivators that spring from those dimensions. The first is, on the left-hand side, the inner directed motivators. These are motivations that we seek to fulfill for ourselves and from ourselves in a way. It is the private motivations that we ourselves know about, which we may or may not choose to express to others, but which are very, very strong drivers of our buying behavior and our choices. There are 7 such motivators in my model, and I'm going to talk to you about them in a little bit more detail. And on the other side, the outward directed motivators are also 7, which are when we are projecting ourselves outside, looking for fulfillments and gratifications for other people outside ourselves. So inner directed 7, outer directed 7. And now let's look at this customer motivators model in a little bit more detail. I can't really get into this in a lot of detail today because we have more ground to cover. But why do people buy in terms of their inner motivations or their inner fulfillments? They buy because of something that makes good sense to them. There is a financial pragmatism about it. It appeals to their sense of convenience or some such good sense motivation. The second is self-love. This makes me feel nice about myself. This makes me feel good in the clothes I wear, or something like that. Number 3, hedonism, which is us just fulfilling our desire for pleasure. When you consume that 3rd or 4th or 5th piece of chocolate that you know has actually taken you over the edge of what you really wanted to do. Another inner directed motivator is personal reinvention. Dr. Vigyan and Dr. Lagate will know this well because they have a large number of students who come and continue their education with places which are providing continued education. And personal reinvention is underlying thought is about nurture better than nature or nurture overcoming nature. So no matter where you start out in life with what opportunities, you want to grow, you want to reinvent yourself, you want to learn a language, you want to learn a skill, you want to raise your own profile in your own eyes by inventing yourself on a higher plane. The next one is joy of ownership. I just love the car I have. I just love being in it. I just love the apartment we've just bought. I love the way I've done it up. I love being here. I'm very proud of this joy of ownership. Valued added experiences, of course, travel, a music concert, all those kind of things. And private legacy, where you say, I've been able to give my children a better education than I got myself. Or I have an entire collection of books that I'm going to gift to somebody who would value them. These are other inner directed motivators, and all these create the seeking of gratification of these inner directed motivators take us to buying behavior. Now, what on the other side are the outer directed motivators? One-upmanship, doing better than your competitor, getting ahead of your peers, ending up with things that others in your level don't have. This is a driver of consumption, it's a motivator for buying. Attention, look at me, listen to me. And the entire social media, all the social media brands bear testimony to how much attention we look for. Vanity, I'm beautiful. I want to stay beautiful. And therefore, the entire beauty industry, for example, it caters to the vanity of human beings, because you can tell a lady who's just discovered wrinkles around her eyes, that wrinkles around the eyes are a sign of age, and it's actually diminishing your beauty. And the woman may be prepared to spend vast sums of money to do away with those lines. Fear of missing out doesn't need much more explanation. Connection, dating apps, reaching out to people, going out for dinners, eating out together with friends and family. All these are our connection motivator, which is actually external driven. Social credit, big driver of motivation and buying. I know how to choose wine. I know how to tell one cheese from another. I know how to guide you to the best restaurant or to the best hotel. I know things that people look up to and come to me for advice. It shows what kind of human being I am, how sophisticated I am, and so on. And finally, public legacy, which is like you leave somebody a building or you bequeath an educational institution with a huge endowment, which allows you to then put your name on the door. So these are all examples of the motivators, and these are influenced or regulated or guided by the amount of money you have, your values, whether you believe in doing things a certain way or you're willing to take the shortcut, whether jugaad is your operating principle or doing things the right way and the hard way is your principle. All those are values. Personality, are you somebody who's primarily somebody who takes flight in the face of difficulties, or are you somebody who essentially fights? And of course, time, when you're making decisions and for how long they're making them for. It is not my purpose to try and get you into this model in greater detail. All I want to say is that we are, as our customers, as human beings, we ourselves are multi-personality. We have multiple motivators. All these motivators are roiling around inside us at all times. And all of these are creating buying behavior for a range of different categories. And we must accept that we as Indians are not sequential choosers. We're not people who are waiting for, something to happen for something else to become a motivation that we'll fulfill. All this is concurrently active in us. And when we look at categories, if we can understand the motivators that are driving categories, you can create a huge source of recruitment for your brand. So that's my first change. Single dimensional customer definitions, sequential models of consumption are gone for good. We must understand consumers as multi-motivated people who are looking to fulfill multiple motivations at the same time. All right, now let me go to the next one. So this really, to wind up that section, it really, I think this quote by the famous writer Walt Whitman really sums it up. Customers today may well say, do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes. This is Walt Whitman's quote, which is very, very applicable to the way customers, consumers, buyers are today. They are contradictory, but that's because they contain multitudes, all of which are active at the same time. Okay. Number two. So first one, multi-personality. Number two, brands are losing the battle for attention. I'll pause there. There was a time when brands were the center of attention. There was a time when people would spend if you go back into ancient history, when television first started, soap operas got the name soaps or soap operas because there were so many soap ads on them. and people spent time watching the soap ads and enjoyed the soap ads. So brands, communication was able to win attention at one time, but today it is my belief that brands are losing the battle for attention. They're losing the battle for attention for 2 or 3 different reasons. One is the human attention span itself is shrinking. And this is data from, I've taken it from a place called WiseOwl, but this is obviously data that is Microsoft's, if I'm not mistaken. And you will all have seen this before, that between the year 2000 and the year 2015, the human attention span went down from 12 seconds to 8.25 seconds. Today in 2022, it's possibly even less than that. Many of us who are on video calls in our working day, we often see people on the call who are sort of on the call, but you can see that they're texting or they're sending something off their phones while they're listening to the call. We are not able to not wander in our attention now for more than 8.25 seconds in 2015. So distraction is a big part of who we are. And according to these studies, they say that the average attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. So human beings have less attention span than even a goldfish now. We're easily distracted. At work, we will check our personal email several times. We will pick up our phone many times to see if there's something that's come in that we want to respond to. When we go to a web page, we will use, on an average, we will only read about 28% of the words, and the rest of it we will just skip. The average page visit lasts less than a minute, and users often leave the web page in just 10 to 20 seconds. We also know that if you're trying to load some data, we're loading a web page and it takes more than a split second to load, we just go away. So we are becoming less able to concentrate, wait, we're distracted, we have a lot of things on our minds. And if our own distraction was not enough, we have a bunch of things which are asking for our attention, which are very, very persuasive in commanding it. We have plenty of things to watch in entertainment, which will obviously, because of the levels of production, they'll be more highly produced than brand content in many cases. And therefore, if there is a choice I have to make between watching a brand commercial or a brand message and watching entertainment, which is better produced and more fulfilling and more rewarding, obviously my choice will be in favor of the entertainment. Now, even television news is entertainment. I say this with all regard and respect for the people who produce it. But you see, very often the programs that are put up on our news channels tend to forego on quiet reporting in favor of loud debate and arguments. So that becomes entertainment of a kind. All this makes it more difficult for brands to get attention and brands to get noticed. And all this is really asking a lot of us when we're thinking of messaging our brands. How will we get and hold attention long enough to present a message that people are moved by? Number 3, and I'm going to just speed it up a little bit because I think I'm running a trifle behind schedule. The balance of power on brand reputation has shifted to customers now. There was a time historically that a brand essentially communicated what it wanted to customers, and the power to control what was said about your brand was in your own hands. So if you look at something like what I've circled on the image on the left-hand side, a toll-free number that you can call, or a PO box that you can send a letter to, or an email ID that you can send an email to, if you have a less than satisfactory experience with a product, these are brand controlled. Because once the brand gets that message or gets that phone call, it can respond to the customer in a relatively private space, and other customers don't know that this event has happened. Today, brand reputations are customer controlled. Customers are by nature quick to publish unhappy experiences and less quick to publish happy experiences. And therefore, what propagates in social media about brands can be more negative such as the reviews that appear in certain places, then they are positive. And as a consequence, we as people in marketing have to understand we don't control the narrative on our brand as much as we thought we did, or we have done in the past. Customers control the narrative on your brand, and therefore it's important to frame narratives in such a way that customers will respond in such a way that you get the right stories told about your brand. So brand communication, therefore, isn't just about putting out the messages that you want to tell the world. It is about curating the messages that other people will tell each other about your brand. And that's because the balance of power has shifted to consumers, with social media being such a powerful instrument of their voice. Next one. In his introduction, Dr. Vigyan mentioned a whole set of technology points. And I would echo his points. He spent a lot of time talking about the metaverse. I'm not talking about the metaverse today because I believe the metaverse is an idea still taking shape. And anyone who's participating in the metaverse at this point in time as a brand is like one of those, people in the distant past in California who would go and dig a hole in the ground anywhere to see if oil came out. It's like you're just exploring wildly at the moment in the metaverse, in my humble opinion. I could be wrong. And therefore, what's really framing expectations right now is digital services. And what digital services are doing is driving up the expectations of service from all brands. And in order to illustrate this point, I go once again to the McKinsey study, where they say consumers continue to explore new technology and their use of services. And this is one trend which accelerated manyfold during COVID-19. So we know that some of the brands that prospered during COVID-19 was people such as, home deliveries, such as financial UPI and those kind of products. So if you look at this table now, and if you look at, let me see what I should pull out for you. The second bar from the top in the blue on the extreme right, which is 38%, is buy online for in-store pickup. So this is digital services. So you buy online, but you pick up from the store. That has shown a very strong increase. But also delivery within 2 hours or 1 hour, same day delivery. Home delivered personal care and grooming, do it yourself. You can see how the arrival of digital services is reshaping the complete service expectation within all brands. It's no longer possible for you to say, oh, they can do that because they are a digital service and we can't do that because we are a physical service. The whole expectation of service is now shaped by digital services, and even physical brands have to understand that customers may seek fulfillment through another means if they are not able to deliver to the high expectations of service that digital is creating. The point I'm making is not just that digital services have grown and will continue to grow. The point I'm making is that they are reshaping what we expect from brands in terms of service. My fifth change point is that we are seeing the end of loyalty as we knew it. Again, briefly touching upon the McKinsey research, please ignore points 1 to 4. Point number 5, McKinsey says loyalty shakeup continues. Most consumers, especially those younger or with higher incomes, are trying new shopping behaviors. A quarter or more switch brands or retailers if a product is unavailable. So no loyalty. This is not new. Like back in 2019, the Business Standard ran a headline which said 2% of Indians are loyal to brands and discounts don't keep them hooked. And another source, this writer, Shira Ovide, back in November 2021 said, the internet broke brand loyalty. Now, this is where the spotlight falls on a different kind of brand. This is the one-person company, the home chef or the home cook who's delivering you food to your home from her home, or the range of small companies that have now become available and who are reaching out to us on Facebook or on a bunch of other such platforms. There may have been a time in the past that a big national brand, which a large number of big stores and presence around the country would have said, that is not competition. But in today's time, that is competition. You could buy your socks to your spaceship from just about anybody. And if it's not available from the big name, you'll go even to the small name. And therefore, the shape of competition, the shape of loyalty is broken. And therefore, consumers are no longer looking to big names to satisfy their needs. They will go to a small unknown person. And if that person meets their service expectations, meets their product expectations, they will just go with that. So brand loyalty is broken. My final point of change is that brands will face multifaceted examinations by consumers. Remember, in my first point, I said consumers are no longer monodimensional. They are multidimensional. They have multiple needs. Because they have multiple needs, they're going to ask multiple things of brands. Now, in the past, it was relatively easy to communicate a brand. If you go back to the 1900s, brands were essentially commodities with names. By the 70s and 80s, we came to the world of brand positioning, where an ad like this one, Super Rinse strikes whiter than any other detergent tablet or bar, would have been the positioning of the brand, that it's a whiteness brand, and it actually is better than anything else. By the 1990s, there was this thing of brand ideas, which is like a different kind of representation where you did not focus on the performance, but you focused on what that did for you in life. So, you will remember, those of you who are from that time, bhala uski kameez, mere kameez se safed kaise, this difference between white and off-white, and this brand was successful then. And then it came to this era of brand ideals, where if you look at the Rin ad in color, below the product shot, there is a line, chamakte rehna, which is like a human ideal or a life ideal about keep shining, not just with your clothes, but in life. Now, these are all relatively simpler times. Today, customers look for brand authenticity. And the model in my book by which I talk about this point is the brand octagon, where around the core, customers subject brands to examinations, not just on its performance, not just on its product interface, about how easy and enjoyable it is to use, not just price, but service, impact on planet and people, culture, storytelling, and customer experience. People have been known to reject brands because they are polluting the planet. People have been known to reject brands because the culture of the organization is toxic. This may be a small proportion of people today, but it is my humble submission to you that this will grow and people will examine brands in multiple ways. And therefore, brands have to construct themselves to be authentic and able to be examined on multiple fronts. So there you have it. Let me conclude this section of what has changed in my judgment with this summary. Number one, what has changed is why people buy. Today's customers are multi-personality, multi-identity. They want multiple gratifications based on multiple motivators at the same time. And this creates opportunity for marketeers because you can recruit customers to your brand from different need states. My point number two, the quality and quantity of attention is changing. Brands are losing the battle for quickly distracted customers. And there's a whole bunch of work that brands need to do, in my modest judgment, to actually be as interesting to customers as other means of other demands on their attention. The third is balance of brand power has irrevocably shifted. The control on a brand's reputation is in customers' hands, and brands have to know this when they go into their marketing. So you have to create brand content which is currency or positive currency in the hands of customers, so that customers want to share forward and actually express positivity to a brand. Number four, expectations of service are being reshaped by digital. Number five, loyalty towards brands is very fragile. No brand is immune from customer promiscuity. And finally, the sixth one, brands are evaluated on multiple fronts today. And customers are now, they subject brands to multifaceted examinations. And a company like Unilever, for example, has embarked globally from its central office to reducing its plastic usage, bringing more recycled plastic into its packaging, and so on, all of which in the face of customer examination, which said that you need to do more in those areas. Great. So those are the things that have changed. Then what are the things that have not changed? And what are the things that remain timeless, that will always be part of marketing today, tomorrow, and well into the future? The first among these is the need to create attractive brands that draw people to them. Brands which have to do a lot of effort to sell, a lot of discounting to be bought, typically have not created sufficient brand magnetism. If you really have created a very strong brand, the response that you would get from customers is, where can I give you the money? Please take my money. I want this. And what happens in India is, because we have so many categories which are relatively emerging, and therefore brands are relatively undifferentiated, and therefore there's enough space for brands which haven't really created great magnetism to coexist and even do well. We haven't really had so much pressure on creating brands that are so attractive that they draw people to them on their own. But some people are good at this. And I think if I was to give you an example, I think the Indigo airline brand is a good example of a brand which attracts people to them, such that if there were two airlines, Indigo and something else of the same low cost carrier, flying on the same sector at more or less the same time, at more or less the same money, it is very likely that a customer might say, I'd rather fly Indigo than the other brand. And that's just one example. There are many others. I'm sure you can think of several yourselves. But this is the core of it. And why is it so important to be a magnetic brand? Because if you go back to Drucker's definition, which still guides me to this day, and is in fact a mantra for me, if there is any time that I lose my way in thinking about marketing, I come back to this simple thought, which I heard in probably my first week at the Bajaj Institute of Management, that the purpose of business is to create and keep a customer. There is no business without a customer, and there is no customer without marketing. So you could well redefine this statement as the purpose of marketing is to create and keep a customer. And if you ever need a North Star as a marketer of any age, of any experience, to just remind yourself, why are we here? What are we trying to do here? Sometimes you get lost in the esoteria of some small dimension of your marketing. You just kind of come back to this point saying, is what I'm going to do creating a customer, or is what I'm doing here going to keep a customer? Have we done this better in some way? And if you for a moment go back to the octagon that I showed you just a little while ago, all those many things help you keep customers. All those many things help you create customers. If you go further back to the motivators model I showed you, all those motivators help you create customers, and fulfilling them help you keep customers. So the purpose of business is to create and keep a customer. Without a customer, there is no business. Without marketing, there is no customer. And when customers absolutely attach themselves to brands in a very, very powerful way, then they remain with you even in the ups and downs of that relationship. Now, I am not a Mumbai Indians fan, I must say. I am not the fan of any IPL team, but this is a photograph of a Mumbai Indian fans, and I put it up because this is a year in which the Mumbai Indians are not doing particularly well. After a remarkable track record in the IPL, they are not doing well this year. But for a fan like we are seeing on the screen, that doesn't matter. Your bonding, your attachment to the brand is just as strong. You will buy the merchandise, you will come to the stadium, you will back your team, and you will continue to have that relationship with that side, that relationship often translating into buying behavior, regardless of the performance of the brand. So when you have those kind of fans for your brand who will be with you regardless of time, regardless of performance, then you have come to a very, very special place. This is the ultimate customer in many ways. So that was my first point. My second point of something that has not changed at all and will never change is the vital importance of making long-lasting connections with people. And how do you make those connections? How do you actually make these things happen? So here is a model again from my book. Many people talk to me about, oh, we must create awareness. If you put your logo on a page, you are creating awareness, but that awareness is not necessarily giving you everything you need. So contact with customer with plus the right amount of information given to him creates knowledge. Knowledge about a brand isn't sufficient for you to create a connection. Knowledge plus relevance. I know what this brand is, and I know why it's useful to me, or I know why it belongs in my world. That creates engagement. Let me find out more. Engagement plus differentiation, saying, I have found out more about the brand, and I know why it's different than others. I know why it's better than others. That creates preference. Preference itself doesn't complete the connection. When you prefer a brand which you also admire, you also think is doing very good things. For example, suppose you believe that there are 2 laundry detergents that can wash your clothes just as well. You have knowledge of these brands, you have engagement with them, you have a preference for them, but one brand is better for the environment than the other, and you are somebody who holds environmental goodness in high regard, then the brand which is better on the environment is more esteemed by you, and that will create desire. The desire without the ability to buy doesn't really translate into consumption. And so desire plus pricing then creates consumption or demand. And when you are actually creating brand connections, you have to look at this entire formula, if you like, because at relevance, differentiation, esteem, all these are important. You may have a brand which is relevant and differentiated, but not held in high esteem, as the example I gave, or you may have a brand which is relevant, not differentiated enough, so a cheaper competitor is preferred, etc., etc. Through the leveraging of this formula, you will come to creating brand connection. So brand connection has not changed. Number 3, creating delight in every stage of the customer journey. This has not changed and will never change. Now, here again is the customer relationship journey model in my book. There are 4 stages. All of you know the customer relationship journey. You may use different language to describe it for yourselves, but essentially your customer journey will be the same as mine. The language I use to describe the customer journey is discovery, companionship, exclusivity, and belonging. Discovery is, of course, is when you discover the brand, when you find out more about it. The response you want from customers during the discovery phase of your brand is, I'm curious. And therefore, brand behavior in the discovery phase has to be different from brand behavior in the belonging phase or in the exclusivity phase. In the discovery phase, you have to be somebody who's interesting. You have to be somebody who brings a provocative point of view, which does things that get the brand noticed, that does things that create interest, so that you elicit the reaction, I'm curious. In today's times, you don't necessarily go from discovery to purchase, especially if it's a high ticket item. If you're buying a motor car, you spend time with the brands that interest you. You may go to a showroom, you may go to a comparison site, you may watch videos on YouTube of trials that the car was put through by some of the car brands. The car magazines and so on. And you may spend time with 2 or 3 different brands saying, I'm going to make my decision between these 3 that I've shortlisted. But the response you want during the companionship phase, which may be short or long, depending on the ticket of the item you're buying, the response you want is, I'm excited. I was curious. Now I'm excited about this brand. The third stage, of course, is where a customer commits to your brand, and that's the exclusivity phase. It is my belief and my humble submission again that many brands misunderstand the exclusivity phase. They think that now that the customer has cut his check, we've done all the hard work, and now we can slide back into a different engagement with the customer. I emphasize exclusivity is perhaps the most important phase of your relationship because two reasons. One is this is the point at which a customer brings all their expectations from the category and puts it down on your brand's door. Now, suppose it's a car, whatever the expectations of fuel efficiency, even if they know you don't deliver it, they would like to see you being efficient with fuel. They'd like you to see you have less wear. They'd like you to stay shiny and new, etc., etc. All the expectations from the category are now at your brand's door, some of which you will be able to fulfill and some of which you won't be able to fulfill. That's one reason why managing exclusivity is very important. The second is, this is the time when you must cement the customer's decision to favor you. That's why unboxing, whatever way unboxing applies to your industry and your category, unboxing has to be very, very, very well handled. If you can help your customer unbox to create delight, like some brands who, like Bose, like Apple, are generally believed to have spent a lot of effort in trying to create a memorable unboxing experience. If you can actually do a great job there, you will find that your customers are further delighted by the decision they made. But if you find, if a customer finds that when they open the box, there's a edge broken, or there's something not there, or they're supposed to call a number, they can't get through to that number. They're supposed to activate a device, they can't activate the device. There's something below expectation in the unboxing stage of the relationship, exclusivity phase of the relationship. Immediately your customer nosedives into a bad place and you're sliding into a negative relationship with them. Assuming you do that well, you don't let the customer slide into exclusivity, then of course you're in the belonging phase where you're continuously behaving with the customer in such a way that they're feeling fulfilled. And so this is the customer relationship journey. Depending on how you handle this, customers rotate through these 4 clusters. If their satisfaction is high, they go from being dippers to desirers. If their satisfaction is high, and even with high exit barriers, if they really like you, they become devotees. Then they recommend your brand. They give positive reviews about their brand. And if they are not happy with your brand, but there is a high exit barrier, they become detainees. And if they feel like a detainee in your brand, they are very vocal and public about their unhappiness. So again, we don't have time to spend a lot of time on this model, but this is a simple model of which to understand how customers behave. My final point, my fourth and final point of what has not changed. The moments of truth are when brands are made or lost, and brands must win in the moments of truth. Now on the screen is an image from a movie called Hitch. It was a 2005 movie starring Will Smith and Eva Mendes. And you see them being intimate on the screen, kissing. And the reason I put up this photograph is, in the movie, the character played by Will Smith, Hitch, says, 80% of women believe they will know everything they want to know about the man in the first kiss. So in a human relationship, the first kiss is a moment of truth. Indeed, there are many others. How you go out with the woman you're interested in, how you seat her, how you order in a restaurant, If those of you who've seen the movie know what I'm talking about, and those of you who haven't might want to watch it anyway. So there are moments of truth. And to define this in slightly more business language, a moment of truth is an instance wherein the customer and the organization come into contact with one another in a manner that gives the customer an opportunity to either form or change an opinion about the firm, an image or opinion about the firm. Such an interaction will occur through the product or service, its service offering, or both. Moment of truth can make or break an organization's relationship with its customers. If your brand can make its moments of truth into moments of magic, you will be creating an extremely strong connection, an extremely strong relationship, an extremely strong, business for your brand. If your moments of truth goes into a moment of misery, you will find that customer connections are not formed, bonds are not made, and your brand will be lost. And if there's one table thumping point I make, it is, yes, we need to do all the other things in marketing well, but we need to win in the moments of truth for our brands to become exceptional. And let me end my little presentation to you with this personal story on moments of truth. At one time in my career, I was the managing director of Lowe Partners based in Dubai for Middle East, North Africa. Division of General Motors was our client. They were the spare parts division that made AC Delco. Once a year, I had to fly to Detroit, actually to Southfield, Michigan. Typically, the meeting would happen at the end of the year when it was cold. Northwestern Airlines hub is in Detroit. I would fly to London and then connect to a Northwestern Airlines flight to Detroit, conduct my business in 2 days and fly back. One day, when I was checking in for my return flight at the Northwest Terminal, this incident that I'm going to describe happened not to me, but in the check-in aisle adjacent to me. A flyer on that airline had come to Detroit from some other place. He had not been able to board the flight he was supposed to board. Northwestern had made him wait all day. Now he was checking in for the flight that he thought was going to take him home in the evening. However, the staff at the counter was telling him he would not be able to board that flight either. They were going to send him on another flight, which would leave after another 4 hours through another city. So he'd have to stop in another city en route, and then he would get home probably after midnight. So this gentleman got upset because he'd been waiting all day, and he raised his voice in a little bit of anger or upset. And the staff member behind the counter also got angry, raised her voice, and there were sharp and angry words exchanged from both sides. At which point in time, the staff member from Northwest Airlines called security. 2 big, broad-chested, strong-looking men came up, stood on either side of the customer, and marched him away from the counter. Now, I had a perfectly good check-in on the next aisle. Nothing happened to me. But when this incident happened, there was this change of atmosphere in that entire area. I was deeply affected by it. I felt that, look, if this has happened to this gentleman today, it could happen to me tomorrow. And I never flew Northwestern again. Although I went back on that route many times, I flew at disadvantage to myself, but I chose not to fly Northwestern. So in that important moment of truth in the airline industry, which is check-in and baggage, loading your baggage, I felt that this was a moment of misery that this airline brand had created for that customer, which also affected me. On the right-hand side, you see Virgin. That was one point in my career when I was with J Walter Thompson in London. I used to fly often to Japan because the business I used to look after, I had a direct responsibility for Japan. I always flew Virgin. By that time in my life and career, I did not drink alcohol on planes. So when I boarded this flight from London to Tokyo, a lady who was serving my section, a member of the flight's crew, came up to me, asked me what I wanted to drink. I said, I'll have a Virgin Mary. She said, I'll bring it to you when the pilot turns off the seatbelt sign. Sure enough, she brought it. I had a nice flight, and exceptional in every way, reached Tokyo, conducted my work. 2 days later, I'm flying back on the Virgin flight to London. And by coincidence, the same crew member was on the flight serving my section again, because I was on the same seat. I used to take one particular seat, which I liked. And the moment she saw me boarding, she said, "Welcome back on board, Mr. Bambawale. Soon as the captain turns off the seatbelt sign, I will bring your Virgin Mary to you. Now, after that, I only for Virgin anywhere that went. This experience never repeated itself. It happened only once, but that was a brand moment of magic, which elevated my moment of truth to a very higher place. Brands will be made and lost in their moments of truth, and that's where brands must win. And therefore, the four things I've said, which I don't believe will change, have not changed and never will. The need to create brand magnetism, because great brands attract customers to them, creating a please take my money response. Number two, the need for brand connections. Brands will need to form intimate connections with their audiences, strong bonds, fans rather than dippers. Number three, customer journey management, creating delight in every stage of the relationship will remain vital, and in fact, possibly become even more important. And finally, winning in the moments of truth. The best brands consistently outperform their competitors in the moments of truth. These are four things I think will never change. So a quick word here again from the sponsor, a commercial at the start and at the end of the session. And I'm done with my prepared presentation. And I'm very happy to take your questions. May I ask the Bombay Management Association team, may I take my presentation off now?
I think you should.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was an absolute brilliant presentation. In fact, when you were giving the example of Northwest Airlines and all, I remember that book by Tom Peters called Wunderman and Tom Peters called In Search of Excellence.
In Search of Excellence, yeah.
Right on the page one, there's an experience of somebody about Delta Airlines. Of course, many things which were mentioned in the book did not exist anymore for whatever reasons, disruptions, whatever. But you know, the customer delight and the one moment actually can make or mar the brand itself. Is such a big thing. And I guess, when I still look into that book, there are many such examples, the brilliant examples which people should not really forget. So, Mr. Bharat, I had left the chat box open for the attendees to ask questions, and they did. Let me just read out one by Dr. Sharma. Initially, right at the beginning, you spoke about these spending habits, and you showed some slides of McKinsey. Dr. Sharma has a question. He says, like, the spending may also be short-lived. This is because the consumers may be inclined to spend due to the impulses of the revenge traveling and revenge dining. What are your comments? Is it really going to be short-lived?
I love that question. I think that's a wonderful question, because the revenge spending has been doing the headlines for a while.
Right.
My belief, and I hope I'm answering the question, my belief is that at our core, we have not changed as people. Some people theorize that the pandemic has changed us in the way we live our lives. And it may have, but it will have done that to a very small proportion of people. By and large, we have not changed. We still want to do all the things we wanted to do before the pandemic. And so, for example, if we wanted to go out and watch a movie, we still do. If we wanted to go and eat outside, we still do. If we wanted to travel for work or leisure, we still do. If we wanted to, buy a new car or, indulge ourselves with a holiday or whatever, we still do. Those are things we wanted to do before the pandemic. We may have a gush of it now, which is whatever you call it, splurging or revenge spending or whatever, but it will not dissipate, because essentially it's my belief, and I hope I'm right in this belief, that we have not changed as people. All the motivators that drive our consumption behavior, whether it's hedonism, whether it is FOMO, whether it is vanity, whether it is the need for attention, all those are alive and well within us. So we will consume. There may be a few peaks and troughs depending on the economic climate, but it's my conviction that regardless of what happens in the short term, in the longer term, we're just going to go back to consuming in a big way. So I feel confident that we will see a return to consumption in India and indeed in other places as well.
So it's here to stay.
Yes, because we have not changed as people. We want all those things.
Good. We need that. I think the only way India can keep growing is.
We could have a philosophical debate on whether consumption is a good thing. That's different. But I'm saying what people will do, they will consume. Yeah.
There's a question from Mr. Mubarak Ali. It's a little long question. Mr. Ali, would you like to ask it yourself? If you can unmute and keep your video on.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks for the opportunity. My apologies. My bandwidth is very low. I couldn't able to turn on my camera, sir.
Not a problem at all. Carry on.
Respected sir, thanks for your invaluable insight. Extending my sincere thanks to organizers for this opportunity. Sir, my question. What are the company, brands or institutions do you like or do you think they are getting it right? My first question, sir. Shall I proceed my second and third question, sir?
No, let me answer your first question first. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
So the one brand that I feel has done a very good job, and I mentioned it earlier, is Indigo. Okay, I think they've done a good job. And why I say that is, again, somebody who's an expert in the aviation field may correct me on the point I'm about to make. But my observation is that a large amount of airline profits are made because of supply side factors. If aviation fuel goes up, you could wipe out a whole bunch of profit. If landing fees go up, you can wipe out a whole bunch of profit. So supply side factors govern airline profitability to a significant extent. That being so, for an airline to create demand side preference, where you actually create things which are, the way in which you express your brand in the upma that you serve, or in the flight attendant that the speech that she makes, or the in-flight information she provides, the manner in which the airline conducts itself with you, both on the ground and in the air. I think that there's something special about that brand. And I think that's a brand that does it well. However, having said that, I want to just segue into another point, Mubarak, and that is that all brands get it right sometimes and get it wrong sometimes. Yeah, it's not like every brand is consistently perfect or every brand is consistently not okay. It's just that when you close the gap between the extremes and you move your floor up, by floor, I mean that you more consistently give good moments of magic, you could more consistently present you create strong connections. That's when your brand starts to differentiate itself from its competition. So I would like you to think of brands as getting it right and getting it wrong all the time, rather than saying, oh, look at this brand, they always get it right. Even Indigo gets it wrong sometimes, right? So do I answer your first question to your satisfaction?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, then let's take the next one. It's up to you, huh? Dr. Vigyan will tell me whether I'm answering your next question.
No, it's fine. It's absolutely fine.
Okay, okay.
You did talk about Indigo.
Please give me the opportunity, sir. Please, okay, please. Shall I proceed, sir?
Please.
Thank you, sir. What are the most important takeaway you want people to remember after reading the book, The 9 Timeless Nuggets? I'm looking forward to read your book, sir.
Okay. So first thing I would say is you read the book. And after that, you will make your own conclusions about which are the ones that stand out for you. Okay. The book is organized in 3 parts. How to think of people, which is where I open the door to the model that I shared with you in this presentation. How to think of people is a way to just imagine consumers in a different way, think of consumers in a different way. The second section of the book is how to craft your brand. And so there's thoughts there which share how you might look at your brand in different ways. And the brand octagon is the centerpiece of that section. And the third section is how to go to market, where ideas such as the 4-box model that I showed you, or the brand connection model that I showed you, the customer journey model that I showed you, those are models in the third section of the book. So my encouragement to you is to read the book with an open mind and let what you like stay with you rather than me try and, shoehorn one or the other idea into your head. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
Ali, you can ask another one.
Okay, sir. Sir, what comes to your mind when you hear this word? Curiosity, resilience, and the future of work.
Well, the first two things are absolutely crucial for success for any human being, curiosity and resilience. In fact, there are, I think it's a TED talk, if I'm not mistaken, by an educator who had done many, many years of study to see which students actually excel over a long period of time. So I forget the name, but I know I have it in my files somewhere. This lady makes a very interesting conclusion, which connects to your resilience point. There are kids who are bright in the class, who do well academically. There are kids who do well in the sports. There are kids who do well in art or in dance, in music. There are kids who do well in different things. Sometimes there are kids who look very, very promising in the early stages of their education life through school. But this study tracked children over a 30 or 40 year period, or I think it was that much, maybe it was a little less, 20 years or something. And the one factor that stood out as being the differentiator between which kid did well and which kid didn't do as well, regardless of the promise that was shown, which this lady calls grit. Grit is the ability to stay the course, ride the storms, stay focused on what you're doing. And you will also see in the big name new technologies, whether it's in its own way Apple or whether it's Amazon, these are testimonies to grit. And grit is another way of saying resilience. So I would say that resilience or grit is a very important factor to contribute to success. So is curiosity.
I remember seeing that video of TED Talk. Was it Angela T? I just checked.
Yes. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Angela.
She talks a lot about grit and passion.
And the resilience point that was just made, I think there's a direct, it's the same thing, resilience and grit. So that's a huge contributor to success. And so is curiosity.
Absolutely. Mr. Bharat, sorry.
Yeah, please.
There's another question also, because Dr. Sharma, is it okay if I moved on to other question, Mr. Ali?
Absolutely, I'm fine.
Yeah, okay. Again, Dr. Sharma is asking a question. Dr. Sharma, would you like to unmute yourself and keep your video on and ask the question?
No, I would suggest that you can read out the question.
I'll read out. All right. The question is,
Thank you.
Creating strong brands is very good. I fully agree. However, the top management is often concerned with the top line and bottom line. Do you agree? If yes, how can brand managers face this challenge of sales pressure and profit pressure? That's the question.
Okay, so there is what you've brought into the conversation with that question is the hard-nosed demands of the business cycle, right? At the end of the day, if you're talking about marketing, people will say, oh, that's all fine and very well, but unless you grow the top line or our bottom line is under pressure because supply side challenges have come or something, so we can't spend on much marketing. So yes, it is an everyday challenge. It's an every year challenge, and everyone who's been in the company for a long time will know that you have the harsh reality of dealing with these. Let me answer this question in two ways. The first is, if you feel that you can survive without making new customers or retaining customers, so the basic funda of are you creating and keeping customers? If you feel that you can survive without that, then you are a company doomed, no matter how strong your top line and bottom line is. So any company that goes down that path saying, ठीक है यार 2-3 साल के लिए हम customer के लिए कुछ नहीं करेंगे, you will find that sooner or later you'll pay the price for those decisions.
Correct.
So it is inevitable that you have to prioritize customers, and it's because customers do certain things that you have a top line. It is because customers make a preference in favor of you that you have a top line. Now, I'm not saying that business owners don't understand that. Of course, they understand that. And they understand that very well. It's not that they don't. But at times, they let the pressures of other demands cloud their judgment on what is otherwise quite a clean and clear line of thinking. And therefore, what you can do in such circumstances, and I don't purport to advise you or lecture you on this subject, because of course, Dr. Sharma, you will be more than able to deal with this on your own, I know. My point is that it sometimes helps, and I find it in my consulting, very often what I'm doing with the business owners that I deal with is really just refocusing them on that. Wait a minute, you're saying that you don't have money to spend on marketing, okay? Which means you possibly will not be able to get a lot of new customers this year if you don't spend in that kind of marketing. Okay, how can we do more for your existing customers so that we can at least get more from them or satisfy them more or keep them with us so when we come out of these difficult times? The point I'm making is if we can bring back the conversation of top and bottom line to customers and what they will do with your brand, inevitably, I think you can see the clarity in doing some marketing. Because anything you do to make and keep a customer is marketing. So I don't know if I've answered your question to your satisfaction, Dr. Sharma, but that's what comes to mind when you ask that question.
That's fine, Mr. Bharat, because only if only we have to increase the top line also, we have to increase the customers. Otherwise, how the incremental sales would be gathered?
Absolutely.
So that is okay. That is okay, but we have to find a relationship between that. I mean, the answer again leads to another question, that if we have to find how the relationship between the brand building activities and the increase in the number of the customers. What is the relationship there? What is the correlation there? That is another.
And every brand and every business and every sector of the of industry will have a different correlationship, right? There's a different, and in fact, when it comes to startups, one of the principal questions that startups are asked before the money comes to scale up their model is that, do you have a scalable model? And what is that scalable model? It is that they have distilled this equation of how do I get the customer behavior that I want, and how much does it cost me to do that profitably for the company? Then you know that if we put this big chunk of change to grow the customers at the top of the funnel and to grow the top line, then we know how that will percolate through into profits. In fact, I don't advise too many startups, but the few that I do, I found that that's really where the challenge is. Have we got that scalable model? And what does that mean in shorthand? It means that we've understood the relationship between what customers do down to how that translate into business for us or profit for us.
Yeah, good.
Mr. Bharat, can I ask? Sorry,
talking to you, Mr. Bharat, and nice presentation once again.
Thank you so much. Very kind.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Bharat?
Please, yeah.
I'm prompted to ask a question. It's simple. So, what do you think should be the key priority for organizations for building better and more authentic digital experiences for brand building, which are inclusive and relevant from the purpose-driven marketing?
Yeah, it's that's a stealth question. It looks simple, it sounds simple, but actually it's very, very complex. So let me not try and answer it, because I don't think I can give you a satisfactory answer on this call. But let me give you these thoughts about that question that you've just asked. Yeah. Essentially, at the top of the funnel, when you recruit people to a brand, you recruit them in my belief. Okay, like that's why, I mean, from the pulpit that you've given me, this is why preaching, right? You recruit them from their need states. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're a senior living brand and you want to give home services of senior living through an app. Right? Why would somebody come to your app? He may come to your app from multiple need states. He may come from the need state of self-love, where he's afraid. He wants to look after himself, but he's afraid that he may not be able to look after himself. He may come to your app from the need state of attention, that he's lonely and he wants company and he wants connection. So it could be from attention or from connection. People come to seek brands as a fulfillment to different things that they're going through. The brand is the same. The services the brand will provide are the same, but my reason for looking for that service may be different. It may be guided by a different motivator. One thing brands sometimes make the mistake of doing is they believe that there is only one reason why people come to their brand. And they don't cast their net wide enough to recruit customers from different need states. This I talk about the top of the funnel, right? Okay, now a certain person has come to you. Brands often spend a lot of time converting that person, explaining to that person the benefits and features of the brand, and then trying to bring him and make him a member, or trying to get him to download the app and get active with the service.
Right.
But they neglect the first month or the first fortnight or the first 6 months of the person being with you, which is the exclusivity phase or the unboxing phase. So I feel like, if you deconstruct the entire channel, you can actually build in actions. I think I better stop there.
I know. Somebody is others have the question to keep themselves on mute, please. It's fine right now. Okay,
let me resume. So, you have to deconstruct the entire contact points with the customer, right from the first to the end, the entire customer journey. And you have to build in fulfillments and moments of magic along the way. That is the manner in which you actually create higher service fulfillments, and you actually create greater, bonding with the customer. Now, I know that's a bit of a general answer, but I don't think I can do better than that.
I know.
Yeah.
And what worked for others may not work for
for
everyone. Yeah. Very true. But I sincerely, in fact, we spent almost about 90 minutes, and time flew. To brilliant presentation. In fact, I was also so excited to look into the presentation, though not a marketing person at all. But I really enjoyed every bit of it.
Thank you. That's very
because
kind.
even the reading all these books in marketing is so insightful, And I'm sure I'm going to pick up your book also and read it. And
please do. And if you can't get it for any reason, let me know. I'll make sure you can get it. Yeah.
Is it available on Amazon?
It was the last I know, but you never know. They may have run out, because then I told you earlier, I think we've sold the entire print run. So then
yes, you did tell me.
There may be some copies still available. Yeah.
Sure. But thank you so much. We'll wrap up the session here, but I'd like to thank on behalf of our President, Dr. Kavita Lagate, the incoming President, Mr. Rajesh Sharma, all the past presidents and members of the Executive Committee, and all the attendees today who are, there were many students also, who were present in the talk today. Very insightful, very relevant, and some things which you mentioned were absolutely mantras for the kids, all those people who are building their career in the area of marketing as such.
You're very kind.
Thank you, Mr. Bharat.
Thank you.
Looking forward to keep in touch with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody, and thank you for spending the last 90 minutes with me. Have a pleasant weekend.
This video, we have recorded the entire video. It will be available on the website of Bombay Management Association also.
If you could send me the link, if one of the BMA team could send me the link, I'd be very grateful, because there are lots of people who ask me, can you send me the,
Andrila, you will do the needful?
Yeah, sure, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and have a great weekend.
Thank you too. Bye now. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you.